The Walrus and the Carpenter. Now, this poem is basically a narrative poem. What is a narrative poem? A narrative poem is a form of poetry that tells a story, often using the voices of both the narrator and the characters. This poem was written by Lewis Carroll and it appeared in his book Through the Looking Glass, published in 1871. Now, please pay attention. This poem is an example of nonsense verse. You need to pay attention here. Nonsense verse. We need to understand what nonsense verse is. See, verse basically means poetry. And what is nonsense verse? Well, nonsense verse is a poetic form which is intentionally silly. It's intentionally silly and paradoxical. What do I mean by paradoxical? Paradoxical basically means contradictory, absurd, puzzling. So, a nonsense verse is poetry which is humorous, which is playful, which is whimsical. What is whimsical? Whimsical means mischievous and fanciful. Now, although a nonsense verse follows all the grammar and structural rules of a poem, nothing is out of place when it comes to format and structure. It's a tightly crafted composition. However, it defies semantic sense. What do I mean by semantic sense? It means that a nonsense verse defies logic and meaning. So, a nonsense verse is humorous, a nonsense verse is playful, a nonsense verse is whimsical, it's paradoxical, it's absurd, it defies logic, it defies meaning. Then why such a poem is written in the first place? Well, this kind of a poem is basically written to amuse and entertain children. Okay. However, it appeals to all the age groups due to its outlandish setting and interesting characters. What do I mean by outlandish? What does outlandish mean? Outlandish means bizarre and unusual. So, the poem The Walrus and the Carpenter is marked by absurdity and playfulness. As you'll see when you'll read it, it features talking animals in a funny and silly situation. All right. Now, let me just give you a brief outline, a summary, a short summary of what exactly happens in the poem. Now, the poem tells a story of a walrus and a carpenter whom we see walking closely on a beach. Now, they come across a group of oysters and the walrus persuades them to come with them by luring them. By luring them on the pretext of enjoying a pleasant walk and a pleasant talk. Now, the excited oysters follow the walrus and the carpenter and eventually get eaten by them. The walrus and the carpenter pose all along as oysters' friends, but they had ulterior motives from the beginning. Now, Despite the poem's absurdity, the scholars and the leaders have looked beyond this fanciful and light-hearted poem or verse and discovered some serious themes. Themes like death, themes like deception, themes like wisdom, themes like betrayal, themes like hypocrisy, themes like exploitation of the weak by the privileged. Now, how a verse or a poem which is nonsensical and whimsical in character conveys such a profound message? Let's read the poem line by line, understand it, and find out how such a whimsical poem, such an outlandish poem conveys such a meaningful message. All right, let's start. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. And this was odd because it was the middle of the night. Now, the poem begins with a paradox. The poem begins with a paradox presented by the strange and baffling image of the sun shining upon the sea in the middle of the night. So the poet describes the setting of the poem as midnight. All right? Yeah. Now, the sun shining in the middle of the night is a cosmic disorder, isn't it? Yeah. The sun has encroached upon the moon's territory. The sun has encroached upon the moon's territory, moon's domain, and has disturbed the order of the nature. It has violated the order of the nature. And he's shining with all his might. Might means power, strength. So the sun is shining with all his strength as if he wants to wipe off the very identity of the moon. Shining with all his might. This expression, this line could mean aggression. Aggression directed at the moon, as if he wants to give a stern message to the moon that the sky is his kingdom and he can do whatever he wants. Shining with all his might, he did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. Billows. What is the meaning of billows? Billows means a billow is a large wave or surge of water, or it's a large wave. Now the sun is illuminating the swirling water below. All right. Best, below, bright. Do we see an alliteration here? Yes, this is an alliteration. Best, billows, bright. And this was odd because it was the middle of the night. So this was strange. This was odd. Absolutely bizarre and unusual because it was the middle of the night. Okay. Now those students who have not done enjambment. Enjambment is a poetic device. Those students who have not done enjambment in their class can leave this alliteration as of now. Let's move to the next stanza. The moon was shining sulkily because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. So now the moon is sulking. The moon, just a second, yeah. So the moon is sulking. The moon is resentful. The moon is disgruntled because of sun's presence in a realm where he does not belong. He is robbing the moon of the pleasure of presiding over her domain. He got no business to be there. Sorry, had got no business to be there. So, this is what the moon thought, that the sun had no work, no right to be there. Why? Because he had his share of attention and fun during the day. And now it was Moon's turn to shine and have fun. So, like a little girl whose game has been interrupted midway, the moon believes that the sun has ruined her chances of having fun, that the sun has taken away her shine, her beauty away from her. Yeah, she feels that the sun has usurped, that the sun has usurped her place in the sky. Now, I'm sure you must have noticed that the moon and the sun have been personified. Why? Because they have been addressed using the pronoun she and he, respectively. And of course, they've been given human-like qualities. So moon and sun have been personified. Now, the sun's decision to trespass. The sun's decision to trespass into moon's territory, despite its silliness, makes some real points about hierarchy and power. How? Let me explain. The sun is shown to be the powerful one here, one who occupies a higher position, and the moon's status is low as compared to the sun. Why? Because moon is less luminous than the sun, and the moonlight stands nowhere in front of the bright and blazing light of the sun. Moreover, moon's light is only a reflection of sun's essential fire. So the moon can only sulk. The moon can only moan. The moon can only complain, but she cannot do anything to change her situation. And the powerful and the entitled sun can encroach and usurp her territory whenever he wants. So the sun's exercise of power is portrayed as an unfair invasion of moon's space, of moon's territory. Okay? Now, as the video is almost 15 minutes long, so please see the next video for the rest of the explanation. Thank you.